my next text is going to have to be to Mongo Feliciano.
Shut up.
Does he know? I bet I wonder. Do you think he knows? It was an off backhanded remark. Now, we used to joke about it. And it has turned into this. The Substation has its own Twitter feed. Pablo Torre Finds Out is doing, how many hours was it? Was this like over an hour, this episode?
52 minutes.
52 minutes.
Listen to the whole thing.
An investigation. Like all of the discussion. This has gone not just to the 49er locker room, it's gone to many locker rooms. Do you remember when Trey McBride of the Cardinals last year, I think it was in the lead up to the Super Bowl, was like, yeah, I would never want to play for the 49ers. I don't want to practice next to a substation. Both John Lynch and Jed York were all over Radio Row during the Super Bowl lead up with regard to talking down the idea of the substation. And thank you to everybody on the YouTube chat and the text line asking if what this is a substation sensation. I don't know.
Yep.
Have we not used that yet?
We maybe did. I don't know. I feel like we've exhausted almost all of them. But
holy crap.
Appreciate that from the text line. It's just looking at this from 49erssubstation.com, which is run by the aforementioned Peter Cowan, the guy who eventually blew the thing wide open. It's the Mongo interview. It's the Chase Senior post. And then in January, this guy posted his first essay on Substack. The next day, he woke up to 500,000 views, and he was gaining 500,000 per hour. And then 5 days later, George Kittle tears his Achilles, which is exactly the kind of injury that Peter Cowan was talking about.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the views on his post had reached 20 million. So in September, Chase Senior 6 weeks later, and then January goes boom, 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 and everything just kind of like ratchets up at that level where he gets 20 million views on his post and George Kittle tears his Achilles. You talk about a perfect storm for this guy.
Unbelievable. I'm floored by this. And in a way, we had everything to do with it and nothing to do with it. I mean, we're just sitting there having a conversation with our guy who used to play for the 49ers. He didn't have anything to do with it. He was like, yeah, we used to joke about that. And it's just a throwaway. Yep. So I thought at the time, and then we've spent a year, how often has this come up on this show without any idea that the birth of it had happened here? And that's why I say, and I'm not even kidding, it's great that I love that Peter listens to our show. I honestly, I whittle it all the way down to that. I'm honored anytime any of you listen to our show. Hope you enjoy the show. Hope it makes you think, sometimes makes you mad, makes you happy, whatever, gets you thinking, talking. All of that stuff is great. So I love it from that perspective. But the subject matter, as I detailed to start off this week, I'm actually kind of frustrated by it, to be honest with you. So the idea that it was born here is a very weird feeling, because there has been, and here's what bothers me about it. I have no problem if people want to go do an investigation and check everything out. The 49ers have been hurt a lot, so sure. Knock on every door and check on everything. Information is power. And so if people want to go out and get more info about this, great. But I think people have. And then once you get the final analysis of all of it, people don't believe the answer. This has been debunked by multiple scientists now, and people don't want to buy it because, A, it's sort of like the retraction on page 5. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Perception. There's also this distrust. But, I'm sort of frustrated by the subject because I've also watched so many people try to take advantage of this situation. And they use it. They use it for their own clicks.
And they misuse it, is what they do.
Completely. And they do it with misinformation. Listen, if you want to drive people to your site, great. That's what so many are trying to do. But not by lying. Not by screaming in the streets, fire, when you know damn well that it's not there. And so that part of it bothers me a little bit.
I get that part of it, and this is why I'm so glad I watched the whole thing with Pablo Torre, because there's a lot of information that they put out in this podcast that I think is helpful. For one thing I learned today is the measurement is called a milligauss. A milligauss, G-A-U-S-S. So
what do you mean by the measurement?
The measurement. So Peter Cowan, the guy who eventually had the Substack post that took Chase Sr. So let me walk you through it. John Feliciano.
I'm struggling with his name. I'm sorry, because it sounds too much like Peter McGowan. Okay, Peter Cowan. Got it. Okay.
I believe that's the man's name. And
you're right. I know that you're right. Anyway, I'm just struggling with it because, anyway, go ahead.
So Feliciano, throwaway line.
Yes.
6 weeks later, Chase Sr. puts a tweet out, and maybe that's where Peter Cowan actually found it. Maybe he listens to us. Maybe he follows Chase on Twitter. I don't know. Chase Sr. in October puts out a tweet that goes viral about the very thing. And so Peter Cowan, the guy who is a scientist, quote unquote, he goes to investigate, and he's got his little meter, and he gets a reading of 8.8 milligauss. The EMF radiation is at that. And he also says in his post, like, I went out here and an underground wire has a 50 milligauss.
Okay.
And Pablo Torre is like, that's an absolute bleep ton. Well, come to find out, until you get to, I think it's 20,000 milligauss of the emission, that's where it can become harmful. So
dangerous. Got it.
Is there electromagnetic frequencies being released? Well, yes. And as I learned in the podcast today, your cell phone, your computer,
absolutely,
the overhead lights, everything that is electronic has the same, sort of emission, and it's not harmful at that level. The only other thing I learned is they looked at childhood leukemia as it relates to people who live near these substations.
Yes.
And the rates are higher, but microscopically higher.
Okay.
It's not like you live within 100 yards of one of these, you get cancer, you die. The incidence, the rates are slightly higher than it would be if you don't live near one of these.
And I don't want to diminish that by any stretch. However, that is irrelevant when it comes to adult football players.
Right.
You said childhood leukemia. Very, very serious, but irrelevant in terms of the way that it has been discussed publicly.
Yes, and I think that they were just looking at the effects, the efficacy of these, rays, these frequencies. If you live near one of these substations, could you get cancer? I mean, you might, and the likelihood is maybe 0.001% more likely based on your proximity.
That could be just happenstance.
It could. And they did a study in Germany, and I don't want to bog everyone down with my research, but they found that in Germany, of all the cases that year, six of the, I think, 130,000, 6 of them could be traced to maybe this exposure.
Maybe.
Right. And again, you don't really know.
No. Of course. And believe you me, of the two people sitting here on this show, you know a lot more about it than I do, simply because you did whatever you did this morning and last night. Milligauss. It rhymes with Christian cost. That's that way my brain works. Duh. I don't know a damn thing about this. And maybe I'm naive and gullible, but this is the way I lean. When studies are done and scientists speak, I tend to put some credence into that. That doesn't make me right. It doesn't make them right. 510 just texted in. How has this been debunked? By having one guy look at it? Come on, man. Why should we believe Pablo? Well, my answer to that would be a lot more than one guy has looked at it. First of all, his research is his research. The 49ers also, and I believe them, but you don't have to. The 49ers spent money on actually doing some studies, their own independent hirings of studies about this, and they too came back with the exact same findings that this is not a thing. Now, I think this one's important for 49er fans to know, because you'll hear a lot of people say, all right, the injury poor luck started in 2016? Something like that, right around when Shanahan took over. But the Niners have been practicing next to this thing since the late 80s. So people will go, why would you blame it on the substation if the injuries didn't start until 2016. Well, somewhere thereabouts, 2014, 15, 16, there's this story that started to percolate this year that, there was a big expansion.
Upgrade, yeah.
There was a big upgrade of
Facts.
the substation.
Facts.
And that is spitting out a lot more of all of that voodoo that you do. And there have been a lot of content creators who have grabbed that fact and run with it with sirens, criticisms, and all kinds of clickbait. Hey, Dibs, tell everybody about the expansion of the substation that happened about 10 years ago.
It was 2014, Mark, and I remember it well. I wasn't consulted on the construction project, but it was the Mission Substation, which is down there in Santa Clara.
Yeah.
And having watched the entirety of the Pablo Torre Finds Out thing today, what you realize is the substation that got upgraded is a mile away.
Oh, let that sit.
It's a mile away.
So it's not the one that's next to the stadium.
No.
Okay.
It's the one that is, as the crow flies, it's a mile away across town. That's the Mission Substation. The one that's right next door is like the NSC or something. I don't have it memorized, but the one that is right there was actually not
All right.
upgraded. That's like creepy. That was
Why
really
do you
good.
even have that? What is that, Paz? Why do you have that?
I got it like 2 seconds ago. It's the substation
thank you.
sound.
Good
Yeah,
Lord.
that thing's about 8,000 milligauss.
Sometimes y'all are in there and you've just got this button at the right time. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Wow. Yeah. All right.
So, yeah,
Anyway.
the substation got upgraded, but it wasn't that one.
Okay.
And this is something that, they brought on a guest in this podcast, and the guest was like, yeah, I did this deep dive and all this, and I found out that, it's not even that substation.
Thank you. So when you are out and about, and I just think this is, look, if you want to think this sounds like, I don't know, snooty patootie or whatever, then you can think that. But a lot of what is out there in 49er content land, and this isn't being a traditionalist or anything like that, but, you've got beat writers, people who are actually tapped in, and I think there are a lot of people that do great work on YouTube who are sort of in that non-traditionalist world, covering all the teams. And the 49ers have a big, growing portion of people who do that, and I think a lot of them do it well, and I think their content is worthwhile and all of that stuff. And then, there are others who, for instance, rhyme with Ant Bone, who give you out-and-out lies directed at pissing you off, and then they profit off of it. And so when you wonder why that stuff ticks me off so much, that's why. It's a bunch of bullshit. Now, this does not suddenly make the 49ers innocent. And maybe that's even the wrong word to use, because a rational person can go, okay, boys, if it's not the substation, if we can just move on from that, then what is it? Why is it 10 straight years of injuries? Fair question. And I can't answer it. I can do the dumb luck thing. Tim Kawakami came on and said the Niners take chances on players with an injury history.
Yep.
I don't really know who the hell's in football without an injury history, but these are all questions that you can ask, and I think that is a completely fair conversation. And you're watching the 49ers, as you've pointed out a couple times today, they are doing it different this year. So they, too, are involved in the analytics of player health and realizing that for whatever reason, what they are doing has not worked. Is it their fault and they're doing? I don't know, but that's a fact. They've had more injuries than others. But this substation thing, to me, is a profitable distraction for a lot of people out there.
Well, to me, Mark, it just highlights the nature of what we have become as an American society as far as our information. So Feliciano with a throwaway line, you laugh, and I didn't think about it again. 6 weeks later, Chase Sr. with a big post, 4 million views. Like, wow, it was a cool post with an overhead picture of the facility, and it was like, all right, yeah, man. And then January 6th, the Peter Cowan, he comes out with his first post, and then by the 12th, Kittle gets hurt. So it was a little bit of a perfect storm of throwaway line, one tweet that was popular, it died down, this guy investigates, boom, Kittle gets hurt. 3 days later, multiple players amplify it. That same day, the Post, ESPN, the Chronicle, they all publish coverage of it. And so now this thing is building momentum. 3 days later, it's Bill Simmons. Then it's The Athletic. On the 22nd of January, the most popular podcast in our country, Joe Rogan, he mentions it. And once it gets to Rogan, now you're reaching people who have no clue about sports. Yep. And then it's Scott Ostler. And then the NFLPA announces that they're monitoring it as a potential workplace safety issue. And so the snowball, you know, the old snowball rolling downhill, it picks up more snow. And by the time you get to March, John Lynch has to go out there and dismiss it. They had to hire their own experts to debunk it. Right. And if you go back to the Lynch sound, and I'm sure we have it, he mentions in there, the levels needed to be harmful is about 40 times what we currently have there. And that is perfectly in line with what the scientists on the Pablo Torre were saying.
Yep. Exactly right.
This is the snowball effect.
Oh, by the way, quick aside, we have to let everybody know, and this is courtesy of Casey Schmidt and something he said on our show a while back. You have to understand and be prepared on our show. We will now use the last name Schmidt whenever we want to say the other word in a way where that way we don't have to have it. Because someone just texted us and goes, LOL, they didn't bleep you out when you said that, Mark. No, Bull Schmidt. We're allowed to say that.
That ball got Schmidt on.
Thank you, Casey.
That's how it started.
So just, if you've got kids in the car, I know it's summer, just explain to them, Casey Schmidt got a torn meniscus, but his last name and then the word bull in front of it is something that we are going to freely use right here on Willie and Dibby on 95.7 The Game. And you can let us know if that causes a problem for you, and we'll take that into account.
It potentially might, and summer's over for some districts. I know that my wife's a teacher, and she's on day 3 of being back to school, which is, I find it to be a bunch of bullshit, quite frankly, if I may.
I hate it.
If I may borrow that. Yeah. And, I do think as you look at the snowball, February 11th, George Kittle reveals dead trees were cut down, and he wants an investigation. And so players chiming in and, national media people, and this whole thing took on a life of its own.
Look, I don't blame anybody. We don't know what we don't know. Why would we know? Like if somebody had said to me a year ago, because again, Mongo called it a power plant, but if somebody had been like, accurately, it's not a power plant, it's a substation. Do you want to know what the first thing I would have said is? What the hell's a substation? I don't even know what that is. Substation.
Right.
I remember actually a few months ago, I confused it with Substack, which is actually a platform.
Mark Stein.
Yes.
Ethan Strauss.
Ethan Strauss. Like,
Peter Cowan, apparently also.
Don't do my show on a substation. I do it on a Substack. I didn't even know what the hell that was. I understand what you're telling me. I'm like, the wires and the bars and all that stuff next to the Niner. Yeah, I got it. But like if you would, what the hell does that mean for people standing next to it? It never would have occurred to me. And it will continue to not occur to me every time I go to a practice at the 49ers facility for the rest of my life. Does that make me right? No, I'm not an expert on this stuff. But I believe the consistent number of studies that have now been done on this that are pretty freaking definitive that is not the culprit. What is it? Still don't know.
Well, you mentioned 3 of the 6 things I think that are culprits, and part of it is drafting players with injury history. And it's not just like, I had an ankle sprain in junior high. They had like Kentavious Street was the guy they took coming off an ACL. They've done a lot of guys off ACLs. I think that Jalen Hurd was a guy who came back after his injuries and he never played. I do think it's the training and the medical staff. They take some responsibility. Kyle Shanahan's approach clearly it's been changed. So you didn't change it just because you want to give guys a little bit of a breather.
No.
I think they changed it because what they've done in the past has led to maybe some problems in camp.
Maybe, but it also doesn't mean that they definitively think that's the issue. And I would add in that they're doing this now because a lot of those players that maybe 5 years ago were 27 are now 32 and, are dealing with more injuries. It's not like the 49ers are out there. Sure, they're doing the jog through, but it's not like they're out there telling their first and second and third year players you could take every other day off from practice. I think they're load managing Mike Evans, Christian McCaffrey, maybe to a lesser degree Nick Bosa. I think he's actually dealing. And, he and George Kittle are coming back from major injury. They've done this with Trent Williams all along. It makes sense to me. It's a different approach. Does that mean that they definitively decided that was the problem? No. But even if they think it might have been a contributing factor, sure, why not try something different? So, I believe all of those things. And you'll never get me to leave what I do believe is the number one factor in all of it. Stupid luck. Dumb luck. That is definitely one of your six.
For sure.
It has to be.
Well, that's what...
it's football.
That's what Pablo kind of concludes his whole thing with, which is, it's not a sexy answer, but the answer is randomness. And the randomness of injuries. And, I was looking earlier at the adjusted injury numbers, and last year the Niners had the fifth most injuries. They weren't number one. I do think that part of what we deal with in this story is a false narrative. They aren't the most injured team year in and year out.
That's another important one.
They're just not.
Yeah, but that doesn't get people going.
That's a stat.
We got to get people going.